Okay. Inbox is on fire. There's 3 deadlines today, but it's fine. It's fine. We're fine. We're fine. We're fine.
Hey, Amber, we've got something urgent here. I sent you an email with all the details, and I need all hands on deck here.
Okay, sure. When is it due?
There's no due date.
So, is it urgent?
Of course it's urgent. It's very, very urgent. Boundaries.
Okay. I'll drop everything to support. I just need the information. Where can I find the documentation for this?
Documentation? We don't document that.
Okay. So, how do I know what to do?
You'll figure it out. We all figured it out. Just start working. Boundaries.
All right. I see you sent this to the entire team. Can we clarify who's responsible for what?
Responsibility, schmonsibility. No, let's keep this really collaborative, okay? I need everybody's insights and expertise here. All right, that's enough talking. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.
Wait. What?
Hello? Can you hear me? Boundaries!
Who said that? Oh my goodness! Welcome to Sanity Pending Podcast. We are on episode 4 now. Woo! And we are going to cover boundaries part 1. And so this is Holly and I'm Amber, and we are your hostesses with the mostesses. For this topic today. Okay, so Holly, boundaries. We've been skirting around this topic for the previous 3 episodes, and so we just finally decided to take a stab and have conversations specifically around this. And so when you think of boundaries, what do you think of?
Oh, man. Just hearing the word boundaries makes me feel uncomfortable. You know what I mean? Like, I know they're good things, but as someone who is naturally a people pleaser, it makes me feel slightly uncomfortable, right? Like I'm going to let somebody down if I set a boundary. And to be perfectly frank too, very early in my career, and I'm going to use career very loosely here because I just mean as soon as I got into the workforce, I got my, where I was getting an actual check here. I remember thinking looking back now, I just remember not realizing that I could set boundaries because I didn't see anybody else around me setting boundaries. Do you know what I mean? So it wasn't until much later that I was like, I guess you just kind of get to oh man, I can't do this anymore. This is just not sustainable, right?
Yeah, no, to that point, I think that whenever I would see people setting boundaries, then I had this opinion of them that they weren't being a team player.
Not team
right?
players. I was just in my brain. I'm like, she's going to say team players. She's going to say it.
Yes. And because that's what it feels like, right?
Yeah.
Like, or at least that's how it's interpreted from those who are in that people-pleasing vein.
Yes.
It's like, if you're not doing what you need to do to get the job done, then you're not really there to get the job done. And that is so wrong. And it is very, very, very incorrect. Now, in hindsight, right? Like, in the moment, it certainly does not feel that way. Like, it feels completely right.
You're right. I think, very early in our careers, a lot of us were rewarded for being flexible, for being easy to work with, meaning you always said yes to everything, right? Because again, people who are, if you have those people-pleasing tendency, that is always framed as professionalism. in a work. So when you're constantly saying yes, that extra work just becomes assumed. People stop checking in on your capacity, and your help is just, it's always expected. You know what I mean?
Right. And those who set boundaries are not in the group of people who are rewarded for their
No.
behavior. Mostly,
Right.
right? Because the behavior that is seen as the behavior to reward is that vein that you were just describing, right? Like flexible, adaptable, always there, which you can still be all of those things.
Absolutely.
And set boundaries. But once you start getting into the habit of being flexible, adaptable, and if you don't set personal boundaries around that for yourself, then they get out of hand. And
Definitely.
you think that you're doing it for the good. And it feels good, right? Like you have all the qualifications and the justifications in your head as to why you're making that decision. And though we may not do it for the reward, it is nice to be recognized for making that effort.
And just coming from another perspective too, of like having been on the onboarding side of it and introducing new employees and stuff, I can absolutely see where new employees are especially vulnerable here. And when they're in a brand new workplace and things like that, because, that probationary period where they feel very replaceable and, you're just super eager to prove yourself and stuff like that. So trying to establish boundaries early on like that kind of feels disrespectful in a way, I guess, would be the only way I could phrase it. It's really hard. Setting boundaries feels really hard. It's really uncomfortable sometimes.
It is. And part of that discomfort for me too is that when I started the practice of setting them, I felt mean. I felt like I was being mean by telling someone no. Or telling someone that I'm not able to do that. Or, and maybe it felt mean because of what I was feeling on the inside of frustration, anger, dissatisfaction, right? That the effort that it took for me to finally set a boundary, I was already in a place where I'm like, I'm done. I'm done with this. And so then maybe I'm projecting what I was feeling. But anytime that I would set them, I felt like a mean person because telling someone no, why is telling someone no mean or feel mean? It's not. It's not.
No.
And I can't reiterate that enough that it is not wrong to say no. But why does it feel wrong for those of us in this need to not be in conflict, need to just get the job done, need to, right?
For sure.
There's such a line between being a really good employee and doing this and then pushing it a little too far on the other end of just I'm not doing that, right? Because boundaries can be said without an attitude, right? They don't have to be I'm not doing that.
Oh my God. I know. And I was going to ask you too, because we, like you said, we've kind of touched on boundaries, or we've skirted around the boundary topic a little bit over the last few episodes. So of all the topics that we've covered so far, what did you find, where was the hardest for you to kind of set a boundary?
Anytime that I set it, anytime that I was working on setting a boundary, that I felt like I would be perceived as a disappointment. That my reputation would be changed as a result of setting that boundary. So all the hard work that I had put into building up my reputation as being reliable and determined, and that by setting this boundary, if I was going to somehow bring that all down, that's where it felt like I would be seen as a disappointment. And those would probably be the hardest boundaries for me to have set. And so usually when that's happening, it's happening in a space where people have seen and been accustomed to me performing and behaving a certain way. And then in trying to set this boundary, I am
We talked about that last time. It's so true.
So that is honestly the hardest space, is where I'm already known.
Yeah.
And it's usually setting it around what I am willing to give.
Yeah. they get accustomed to seeing you a certain way as the go-to person, the always dependable, will like no matter what time of day will always like check their phone or something like that. Do you know what I mean? And that gets really hard. It gets hard to course correct when you're so far past that line. It's like, well, now how do I change it without feeling like I'm burning bridges, you know?
Right.
Yeah, definitely. Right. So it's so funny. Because I knew we were going to talk about boundaries today. I actually spent quite a bit of time yesterday just kind of like reflecting on my experiences over the years. And probably one of the hardest places for me was always around gatekeeping, because we said it, like, I'm very anti-conflict. I don't like conflict. I try to avoid it at all costs, which is why, like, you know, I have these people pleasing tendencies where I'm just like overly kind to people. And so for me, like, gatekeeping is really tricky because you're not necessarily being asked to take on more work per se. It's not saying no to extra stuff. Like, most of the time you're just being asked to do your job, but you may not have the information or the access that you need to actually do the work that's being asked of you. So that's always been kind of the hardest boundary for me, because I know we talked, not to go like too into the weeds again, because we talked about how gatekeepers are really good at gaslighting and really good at shifting the blame. So you are made to seem like a problem because you don't know something already, right? It's a huge inconvenience, and that really messes with you. It messes with your confidence. And I know for me, when I had to always get like, I learned that I needed to get very, very specific. So if my work depended on somebody else, my boundary was always, I need documentation and clarity here. If I'm being accountable for the results while I'm also dependent on people who could potentially delay or just block me from getting the information or access that I need, that is a total setup. So if I don't have the authority here, then I need to have a written record of who did, so that responsibility is very visible and it's not assumed here. That was always the hardest part for me. It was like, I need that in writing. I need that in writing. Like, it always looks like, yeah, like you come across as this very like you're hard to work with. You know what I mean? It labels you a certain way. I have this reputation that's very important to me, yet I also want to be very clear about, you know, what I am and am not responsible for.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And this has come up a few times about reputation. So I'm actually curious if we should explore reputation.
Like, you know what? We really should. We should talk about that. Yes.
Because it does feel like it has a drive of importance for each of us in these different ways as to the motivators behind why boundaries are harder to set, why we choose to act a certain way is in protection of our or preservation, protection or preservation of a reputation.
Yeah, because your word of preservation made me think of just like survival too. I think like sometimes people don't set boundaries, not because they know that setting boundaries is a good thing. I don't think they're not setting boundaries because of that. I think that they're maybe choosing not to set boundaries because they're just trying to survive the day-to-day work. They're just trying to survive, because I can like think of several instances where I was asked to maybe take on more work than I could really manage, or to, because I am known as a dependable person, being brought in to help with something that was maybe outside the scope of my work and stuff. And I remember having conversations in my head, like, feeling really overwhelmed, but not being able to articulate in the moment, like, and set a boundary in that moment. You're just so overwhelmed and so like, so much going on. And the thought I would use to convince myself. I'd say just this once, or I'd say this will be the last time and next time I'll say something. And it's a slippery slope because you're just trying to survive. Sometimes it's really hard in the moment to think like, hey, wait a minute. I need to pause and think. You want to get a thing done and move to the next thing because your to-do list maybe is so overwhelming, you know?
Yes, which is a beautiful, like, I feel like this is why boundaries is so important today, because we started with burnout to gatekeeping, right? To kind of group projects, being a team player, right? And so like we have so many themes that we've already talked about that have culminated to this conversation around boundaries. And then ultimately what I feel like we're understanding and hearing is that we have a lot of different reasons for why boundaries don't make sense to put up or enforce or even understand what it is that we would want to have happen.
Yeah, right.
We just know that we want to either feel better or not feel overwhelmed, burdened,
yes,
inconvenienced, frustrated, angered. Like there's so many things that boundaries, like in hindsight, seem to be, I wish I would have done. So there have been smaller boundaries. I think that maybe when we talk about them being really, really hard, I think that's when it's really big. So I've set small boundaries that I feel like that are little tiny ones. Like, for instance, I will not, I don't know, like go to the grocery store on like Sunday afternoons, because it tends to be the busiest and I don't like being around. Right.
Always.
So to me, that's like a personal boundary that I set around when I go and do things. Or if somebody makes a comment about a physical feature or like the color of my hair, or if they are making a comment to kind of like pick on me, or like I will say, I don't engage in conversation like that. Let's move on to something else. That feels easy to me. And I think it feels easy because I'm so accustomed to having the words to give around that I'll be like, okay, like that's uncontestable to me. Like we don't pick on other people for the way that they choose to appear. And so I wonder if it's also, I don't have those strong of feelings when it comes to how I work, because I just want to work and go home. And so
that's true. I just want to work and go home. Amber, yes.
I just want to work and go home. Yeah. And that's it. And so I don't understand why it becomes so complicated. And so so there, I do have instances where they're not necessarily lead to funny, right? But I do have instances where I'm setting boundaries all the time that I'm just accustomed to setting them in that moment. Or even boundaries around my time. So
definitely around time.
I definitely am like, I like to go to bed early, and I have a routine that I set around like when I'm going to bed. And that's a boundary for me, that I won't make plans that interfere with that routine happening. So I don't want to make boundaries seem like this huge, like as I mentioned before, like mythical thing. But why does it feel that way in a work setting? What makes it harder when you're trying to set a new boundary, I think, is maybe where it gets the most challenging and difficult.
I definitely don't think boundaries have to be this thing that you always have to have like a pep talk with yourself before you decide to set the boundary. It could be something like you said, like, somebody's trying to call you and you're 2 minutes before your shift ends. You answer the call and say, hey, let's pick this up again tomorrow during business hours. Boom. Like, you know what I mean? It doesn't have to be this overly complicated thing. And like my favorite was like the group project stuff. Amber, I love the stuff that you were just like, hey, I'm going to take this. Everybody else, what are you taking? Just kind of like laying it down. Like, I'm responsible for this. Whatever happens over here, we're going to just let the natural consequences occur. I mean, those feel easy to do. And it's like small practical steps that you can kind of like dip your toe in and start setting some boundaries before you get to some of those like maybe harder ones where, like we've talked about, people they see you in a certain way. They see you as this person already. And now you want to kind of change that, or you want to put limits on it or something, that's where it gets a little harder sometimes to do, for sure.
Shall we get to our story? So yes, it's
another rough one.
This is a rough one. This is a rough one. Listener submitted story. This one hurt. This one hurt. So just letting you know.
Yeah.
Okay. So I worked for a small regional theater. Didn't work for huge shows. We were abysmally underfunded, but we worked with passion. And so it was the kind of place where everyone said, we're a family. Heard that before? Yeah. I was leaving for home after a brutal rehearsal when the director stopped me and asked, can you stay? The cast really needs you right now. Okay. I stayed because I felt I couldn't let these people know who I knew were working so hard down. And so this wasn't the first time I stayed either. Right? So a month or so later, I needed to leave early for a family commitment. And the same director says, tonight's not a great night for that. The energy's fragile. So, right? So I didn't quit that night, but I changed. And I started to withdraw emotionally. And the same care I gave of myself to others wasn't given in return. And I still did the job, but I lost my connection to the care. And so I had people come up to me and ask if everything was all right. And it was whispered that something had to be wrong because I was less engaged. One night I lost it on everyone and exploded in rage that I wasn't hired to be everyone's emotional support system. Absolute silence. But the next day, I had people come up and apologize and then share how they felt the same. So I did eventually leave, and I heard that the theater schedule got better, but I can't help but still feel anger. That change isn't easy to happen until there are enough casualties. Oh my God.
God, Amber. Oh
Right?
my God. Yeah.
For me, I think the part of this story that really, really stung was I still did the job, but I lost my connection to the care.
Yeah.
That is where it's like, oof. I felt that one real hard.
Yeah. Well, and can I just say right away, I had not great vibes, Amber. As soon as I heard we're a family, massive red flags all over the place for me. Massive red flags. Because in a work setting, that is used to mean like, we have unspoken rules here. It's uneven labor. It's used as you should do this versus hey, are you able to help with whatever? We kind of hinted to this, but I don't need a workplace family. I want a healthy, stable, professional workplace. I'm here to work and go home. Like, just don't use that as an excuse to abuse me. We're a family. Get out of here. What the heck? Sorry, massive red. I already felt all sorts of ways after sentence one.
Right? Because it does seem to be an ultimate guilt trip. Like you
total
said,
guilt trip.
It's the unspoken expectations.
Yeah.
The invisible burden that is placed on you that does not come with a dialogue or conversation.
And I will say, too, the people pleaser in me can see, I recognize a fellow people pleaser here in this story because, how you give every bit of yourself hoping that somebody's going to notice, hoping that they can see that you are giving 110% and step in to help. And then when that doesn't happen, the resentment, right? Resentment builds. Like, how can they not notice? How can you not see that I am drained, that I'm burning the candle at both ends here, that, there's almost nothing left of me? And then the remark about how something along the lines of they were becoming disengaged or something. I mean, seriously, Amber, I would have snapped. Because people pleasers were overly kind, right? We said it. It's a survival skill to avoid conflict. We don't like conflict. We don't like it. So,
right.
But that kindness, it was used against them. That kindness without limits
Yep.
It's now self-neglect, right? Like somebody took advantage of that. Oh God, it just makes me feel all sorts of angry. I almost kind of like need to like walk it off.
Right? Deep breath, right?
Yes.
I think something else that stood out to me as well is in the story there. I'm curious and I wonder if somebody has had a conversation with them about boundaries because of what could have been a statement of, I stayed because of this reason. Usually the justification as I I maybe knew that I was being guilted into staying because of them playing with my emotions and knowing that I care and using that to weaponize me to stay, but then I still chose to stay. And it's that justification statement around I I wanted to give them, I think it was said something along the lines of, I stayed because I knew that they were working just as hard, right? Like I wanted to be there
Yeah.
for them. So it was like they agreed with the
Yeah.
guilt that was being thrust upon them, but they might have still recognized that there was guilt. So it does. So
Yeah.
knowing what, again, there's that line again about knowing what you need to do and then not being able to do it because there's something else that takes that priority. And that is why, in my assessment, that's why boundaries are so hard. Like they're not just running rampant all over the place, is because there's something that is superseding, that is in that moment for you, is either the pattern or is more important. It may not even be something that is consciously done. It's something that you were accustomed to doing, and that's why to have to think about your motivations in that microsecond of a moment, another
Exactly.
reason why boundaries are hard. You don't
Right.
think about it in that moment.
Right.
You're just, even though you may be feeling like, I don't really want to stay. I don't really want to be guilted. I don't really want to. The first thought that you think of is, let me set a boundary.
Amber, I need a coach's take on this.
Yes.
Please hit us with some knowledge here.
Okay, so I think that when I look at this story as a whole, and when we are trying to think of, it's not about wanting to reflect on this story and go, this would have been a really great time to set a boundary, right? Like that's not that's not the tone, right? Or even the reflection that we want to, like, I think that's, we use this story as an example of this would have been a great, story for a boundary. But I think that the question that we can use as reflection to open up the insight would be, where have you, put in whatever pronoun there that makes sense, but like, where have I confused being generous with being endlessly accessible? The work of the reflection isn't about berating yourself about what you could have done.
Right.
It is more about, let's investigate to see where I had more choices than what I thought that I had. And in this question, it offers an opportunity to explore for you what generous means, how you define generous, how you have understood when you have been generous before. So when you use the word generous in your actions, what stories do you have about when you were generous? And then do the same thing with the word accessible and determine when you have been accessible, what that looks like for you. Come up with your own personal definition of what accessible and generous mean. And if they are not different for you, find the difference.
Yeah.
Because they are, right? So generous and being generous, having generosity implies that that's freely given. Being accessible is more of like an open bucket. Of where that choice is taken away from you, right? Generous is a choice.
Yeah.
Accessibility may not be.
I really like that. Man, that distinction between the two. I will say too, I think everybody, it's one of those things that you're not going to think of in the moment. You probably won't even think to like plan for this, right? Think ahead of an instance where, I reached my limit. It's a hard lesson that I think a lot of people learn, that you really have to take ownership and responsibility for setting reasonable boundaries at work if you want your work to be sustainable, because you cannot rely on other people to just notice or to swoop in and see how busy you are and just magically adjust their expectations. They are probably feeling the same way. Like in the story, they were like, hey, we're all feeling the same way. Like there's nobody's going to save you in that. Like you have to do the hard work. And like for a lot of people, it's a lesson you learn the hard way, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I've heard setting boundaries and boundary work stated in this really cool way that I really have enjoyed, that is setting a boundary is giving the roadmap to someone else how to exist with you.
I already like that, the roadmap thing. I already like that. I love that imagery. Oh,
right? Like
yes.
It's letting someone know at home, in the workplace, right? Wherever. It's letting them know the keys to that door, like to open. Like this is how to work the best with me.
Yes, I love that.
And if that helps you set those boundaries to be like, oh, you know what? I work really, really well when I have all the information. To use your example earlier,
right.
I do really, really well when I have all the information. So if you're going to work with someone, you don't want to come right in and be like, here's the map. And if you don't stick to it, I'm going to be pissed, right? Like you don't want to take that approach and have a whole scroll. Like I'm imagining you have a scribe, a herald who's come in with this whole scroll reading out.
Yes.
To work with Amber, you must, and then list out all of the things. I know, right? You like my herald?
I love it. It's so great.
So you want to be careful of that.
Yes.
But you can do it in really tactful ways. So like if you were, if you and I were going to be working on something and I didn't know that you needed a lot of the information up front and you started asking all of these questions, right? And about needing information, right? Then maybe that's an opportunity for me to ask, oh, it sounds like what type of information are you looking to have before you get started? And then it offers a conversation that then helps bring that boundary out without it needing to be, you must do these things. They don't have to be decrees.
Yeah.
And I get it. The person that you're working with, especially in the gatekeeping scenario, they're not going to ask those questions, but they are questions that you can ask and say, I work really, really well when I have a lot of information. Is that something that is going to be available that I can have before I get started? Right. And that can be a question. And asking that question is your way of entrance into the conversation around what you need. If it's really uncomfortable for you to set, because it's going to sound like you're setting, I know. I will only do these things if you do this.
It makes it sound like an ultimatum, which it is not. That's not boundaries. That is not what boundaries. Yes. Right. Amber, I love the roadmap thing. I just love that imagery about being upfront. It feels honest. I like it. I like being clear about your workload, your available time, all of that stuff. Because to your point, it's not saying like, I won't work, blah, blah, blah. Like it's not an ultimatum. It's none of these things. No. I almost wish somebody had explained it like that to me, Amber. I love that. I feel like that really resonates and I can connect the dots there. Man, where were you when I had to navigate this on my own? It was so complicated and hard.
Where was I for myself? Like, man, please know that this is hindsight, friend, right?
Yes.
And all things that I had to learn. This is all learned behaviors. And I still am learning where boundaries are still important for me now. This is an ever evolving, growing practice. to work on boundaries for certain.
Yes.
And again, to be able to know what your roadmap looks like, the reflection activities around what didn't go well for you is really helpful when you can look at it not from a point of view that is attacking yourself. If you can avoid the shame loop about what you should have done, or could have done, it's not about changing your action with what has already happened in the past. It's about taking the information that you have to answer the reflection questions, to identify what it is that you learned was important to you in that moment, right? And in this story, it sounds like it was really important that their time was valued. And it wasn't valued. So I bet that they have taken this lesson and maybe applied it in other ways and in other job opportunities. I'm curious for them if that is something that has gotten better in their other jobs because of this experience. Like, so if you are somebody who is working on boundaries, and this is something that is like, I want to start working on this, or I'm currently in the midst of trying to establish boundaries for myself. Something really, really important to remember and know is that boundaries almost always fail at the enforcement stage. So when you know that you're going to set a boundary and you go to enforce it, it is most likely going to fail. And it is because they were never examined at the belief stage. So if the work of determining how this boundary fits into how you perceive yourself, what you are trying to grow within yourself, what you need to protect within yourself, if you don't have that established at your belief stage, then when you go to enforce the boundary, it will fail.
Wow. Yeah. Because every boundary I've ever tried to set has been tested, and some of them have failed. The ones that I guess I was just kind of like, oh, fine, whatever. Like, again, another moment where it's like, I should have maybe really thought about these things, the things that I really wanted to protect. Because some of those I wish I hadn't. I would have fought harder. But again, those were really early when I was a little bitty and didn't know.
Oh my gosh, but when we're little babies, we don't know anything. We think we do, right? And we're like, you can't tell us anything. And now that I'm older, I am losing the care about what people think.
Yes.
So I also have that going for me too.
That's true.
And so the hindsight for me, the lens looks very different because I don't have the, somebody's going to feel this way. I mean, it's still there in terms of my reputation.
Yes.
But not in terms of, because I feel like my reputation is actually a separate part from who I am.
You do see it's a weird. You see it separately.
I do see it separate. And yes, it's a part of me, and I can take it personal, but it doesn't feel like it is. It's maybe not connected to my values and beliefs, because those are what define who I am as an individual.
Yeah.
But my reputation, especially in a work setting, they're not always necessarily tied to values and beliefs, right? They're tied to accomplishment and the achievement.
I'm so glad we talked about boundaries. We'll have to definitely plan for some, a future boundaries episode when we cover some more topics, because I feel like it's going to keep coming up. And like I said, without making them 3-hour episodes, we're going to have to kind of take a pause. Let's talk about some boundaries over these topics. So I'm glad we got around to doing this.
Yes. I mean, and it aligns with needing to continuously reinforce boundaries. So this, I feel like a majority, a good practice, and definitely a majority of topics that we cover, right? There's going to be a boundary
Yeah.
So if you've got boundaries
you got it.
that have been crossed and stories, oh my gosh, we have an anonymous Google form that we would love to be able to share your story if you are so willing to let us have an eye on it. And then we can have a topic to share with all the wonderful listeners that we have now, which thank you to everyone who has subscribed so far.
Yes.
We have a great big heart, and we love our fans, and so we would love for you to become a fan. Submit your story, subscribe to our channels. We do shorts now. We're super fun and exciting. So
we are. And if you're just here for like the chaos and the memes, we've got a subreddit for that. Well, thanks everybody so much for hanging out with us here on Sanity Pending Podcast. I'm Holly, and this is Amber, and this is your reminder that if you haven't throat punched somebody this week, it was a good week. See you next time. Bye, everybody.
Banana bread at work, dog? Hell yeah.